I would like you to talk a little about what you think about God's way of things and how you perceive it to be. It took, I think, the hardest thing for me to accept about God and His creation on earth is the fact that maybe God does not want excessive happiness for us here. God wants us to be happy, but to a moderate degree. He does not make us aesthetically happy unless we get to heaven, is what I'm guessing. I've heard over the years many sad stories, tragical stories about lovers being meeting death, meeting split, being split, being unable to make it to each other, dying tragic deaths. You hear about how like a tragedy always follows some sort of a height of happiness in a person's life. For example, you meet a long lost brother or parent, and then the next day your parent dies or you die. So you hear about these stories and you're like, oh, I wish they didn't happen. You're like, I wish it was different, and you keep wishing that it would happen. And I had, for one, was for the fact that maybe if we love right, if we love our partner right, if we love our loved one right, maybe it wouldn't happen. Maybe the ecstatic state of happiness can happen in this earth. But I don't think that's meant to be. Maybe God does not want us to be aesthetically happy, maybe because we can't handle it without God, possibly. But He does not allow it. And I know for sure now that that's not what He wants. What kind of happiness He wants for a person, how much pain He gives a person's life, I don't know. I don't know what the worst pain a person had to endure in a person's lifetime was, and the extent and everything. I do not know. But there's a whole history behind this, and there must have been someone who was the most pathetically pained beyond everyone else. And I'm wondering who that could be. We could think of maybe Job, the person who had suffered so much like tragedy right there. But then there are slaves who have been slaves all their lives. Black slaves and possibly other kind of slaves too. So, you know, life on earth is something that maybe we learn, and we learn God's law maybe. But I don't agree with the fact that the more I see, I don't agree with the fact that we keep God's law and we get to heaven. It's more like God's laws are there for us to learn, but we have to love to get to heaven. So if it means breaking the commandment in order to love this person, that's what God wants, not keeping the commandment. And we think in our straightforward, a little bit of a restricted mind, that that's what we have to do to go to heaven. And we want it because we want to go to heaven. But is that the right thing to do if you think about it? And you think about if that's what God wants in you, and you think about what happens, maybe that's a wrong teaching of commandments, that sort of thing. I agree with you. So you're saying that it's not the keeping of the commandments that get you somewhere. It's the love that gets you somewhere. I think it has to be ulterior. Like Reverend had actually mentioned the word ulterior to us at one point, and I do see a lot in that word. When you do something without aiming at something, without a purpose behind it, I think God sees a lot in that. Sometimes you don't always do that, but it's important. For some reason, I haven't figured it out yet. I haven't figured it out yet, but for some reason that is important, and God sees that, I think.